Hello, everybody. This is Last
Hello,
Minute Movies.
hello, everybody. As Igor said,
Yeah. Um.
this is Last of the Movies. What are we doing today, Igor? This is for you, buddy.
Yes. Today, I'm really excited about today's podcast because we are talking about the film that pretty much shaped my childhood, and I've been watching this cartoon over and over again. We had a DVD and a cassette of that cartoon, and it is. I personally think, is the single most underrated Disney film of all times. I've seen the movie very many times, and many times in Russian and many times in English. And Ali, you have seen it just now. What is your? Have you seen it before?
So it's hilarious. I'll tell a little story before we really like get into all of this stuff. So like Igor was talking about this film like Treasure Planet, right? And I've never seen it before because I was always more of a mainstream Disney kind of guy, and just I was more like mainstream Disney. So like I watched just like the most popular Disney films that everyone was talking about, but there was other stuff I was always watching like Avatar or just like anime in general and all that. So I never really got into like the other kind of Disney films like Treasure Planet, which were more underrated and kind of quiet, and all of that. But I am familiar with the story, funny enough. So, like, I'm watching this movie, and like 15 to 20 minutes into the movie, I'm like, wait a minute. This character's name is Jim Hawkins. This other character's name is John Silver, like Long John Silver. I'm like, oh shit, this is based off of Treasure Island, but it's space. I really enjoyed the film actually. I had a good time watching. Once I realized like, okay, this is Treasure Island, I really like got into it and I really like liked it and all that kind of stuff. So there were specific moments where I'm like, oh shit, is this about to happen or this thing's about to happen, and all of that. And one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed, I probably enjoyed the most about it, was the animation. The animation is just absolutely gorgeous. It's so beautiful, like especially from like the early 2000s. I mean, all the Disney animation back then was really like it was really good, but for this one, just how they're flying through space, the supernovas, the lights and the stars and all of that kind of stuff. It was just really profound to see. And I actually miss that kind of Disney animation. I'm not entirely sure what it's called.
I'm about to
Yeah.
tell you everything about it. So,
Okay.
what makes it so fucking beautiful is the deep canvas technology that was developed initially for Tarzan. And honestly, like this, there's a lot of breakdown videos for Treasure Planet. So I'm just gonna skim through it. I'm not gonna bore people with things they probably already know. But Deep Canvas is this 3D animating platform that was developed by Disney for the Tarzan movie to do like the thing where he's sliding down the trees and everything, where they
Hmm.
create this gray 3D shapes of trees, and then they use and then they hand it over to the 2D animators that add the character to it, and that creates this very nice dynamic background. And the very interesting thing about this film is that Tarzan only used about 10 minutes of deep canvas in all of its scenes combined. Meanwhile, this film required every single scene to be made in deep canvas, and it is expensive. Like Tarzan, people who worked on Tarzan had such a hard time putting together those 10 minutes, and it was so expensive. And this film just utilizes it in every single scene, down to a point where like John Silver's arm and leg were created in deep canvas, while the rest of his character was actually the 2D drawn, and one was overlapped over the other. And the funny part is that you don't see it. It's seamless and it's incredible. And for the year the film was made, I think that's animation is one of the best ones I've ever seen, and it still holds.
Yeah, especially for like his eye and all of that, just how expressive like the characters really were. Like you could see the pain in like Jim Hawkins' eyes when he realized he was betrayed. You could see the happiness. You could just see so many. There were so many like emotions that you could see throughout the film that were expressed very well because of the animation. I do miss that style of animation. I sometimes wish like Disney would go back to it, but I had a good time with it. There were a few instances where the CG, or I don't know what it was, but it didn't look too good, like with the whales, like that part,
The eye
the
of the
whale things.
whale.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it stands out, and I think just the visuals in this film, and yes, the Eye of the Whale might be a little strange to look at, and it does stand out, but the deep canvas technology and the 3D animation and the CG does allow to create these dynamic scenes. Like, to me, that opening where Jim Hawkins is flying through the factories and mines and all this shit, like, that is the most beautiful opening I've ever seen in any movie, including like live action. Like, I cannot think of any film that has a better dynamic character introduction than that movie.
We'll have to debate that, but that was a pretty good one.
Well, if
I'll
you
give
can
you
think
that.
of something from the top of your head, I'm willing to talk about it.
Okay. I can't, off the top of my tongue, I can't exactly think of one right now. But obviously, I mean, if we want to get into the memes, I guess like Shrek.
Okay, fair. Okay, nothing beats The Offspring. Nothing beats The Offspring. That I have to, okay, I'll give you that.
Okay.
I yield. You know, I was under the impression that everybody has seen this movie when they were little, but you haven't. And I'm like, just I feel like you're almost deprived of this childhood experience.
Well, there was other like childhood things that I kind of like watched and like looked up to film wise, and we'll get to those films one day. But for this one, no, I don't know. I guess I never really came across it or anything like that. But I can definitely see how it shaped like childhoods and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's the kind of shit that really maybe be like, oh, okay, well, that's a really good message, you know, for the film and all of that. So I could see, I don't know for you personally if you like saw yourself in Jim Hawkins, but I can definitely see like,
you know,
how...
I gotta say, the little me, I was Jim Hawkins. Like, I have to say, like, the way they kind of followed the main storyline of the Treasure Island, but they did add these little elements to the characters that made them so much more relatable. Like the absent parent storyline and the way the relationship between Jim and his mother changes from him, you know, being very little to then his father leaving somewhere along the line, and then shit just kind of started hitting the fan, and, you know, their whole life just kind of went to shit. Yeah, I was definitely him, and it wasn't really, you know, it wasn't the absent parent that made me kind of associate with it.
It was for me.
Yeah, you see, like, that's what I'm saying. You know, people, there's so many ways of looking at it, and for me, it was this idea of self-searching. Because Jim kind of thinks that he has no future at the beginning of the film, and that's kind of the arc that is forming, is that he it's a coming of age story in some way for him, but yeah. I want to say it's the idea of self-search and the fact that he's kind of stuck in the lifestyle where he will not have a future, although all he wants to be is he wants to feel the sense of freedom, and he wants to, you know, roam and do his own things and fly and have this sense of freedom and, you know, adventure in him. But he has no idea what kind of future he has because he just doesn't know himself that well, and the world around him seems to be very hostile to this type of behavior. And the way he is written is that he's slowly obtaining it through the mentor characters, through all of these experiences, by finally leaving his, you know, shell of that place that he grew up in, to, you know, respond to the call to adventure.
And I think that's an important thing when you're growing up and all that kind of stuff, is that, you know, unfortunately, like a lot of kids, you know, whether they live in poverty or they're stuck in a really bad situation with their parents, but when you're dealing with a tough time and all of that, a really important thing is being able to go out and, you know, adventure on your own. I think that's why, you know, college has so much emphasis put on it, is to, you know, go out by yourself, find out who you are, and just really, you know, adventure and broaden your horizons. I think that's something that really, you know, helps out a lot of people. I enjoyed that being in the film. I thought it was a very important lesson in theme.
And you know, I gotta say, one of the things that I really enjoyed was the music, and there's like a 70-30 rule when it comes to soundtrack. And the overall aesthetic is that they have a 70% kind of Victorian type, you know, world, but not steampunk, and then 30% like space sci-fi type aesthetic. And they absolutely meet themselves with the soundtrack as well, because you have all of these orchestral music that is present for the majority of the film, and then there's this like for the credits sequence especially, there's a song called Always Know Where You Are by John Resnick, and it's this modern kind of punk rock, a little grungy sounding, I guess, modern sound. And I don't know why, but like that I think had a huge effect on me, just like the difference in the styles of music, because the orchestral music, it was putting you into the space of the movie, and it was just kind of exploring the story itself. And then that music was coming in to remind you that, like, hey, you live in a modern world with like modern things happening, and we're aware of that. And for some reason, for me, I know it's not for everybody, but like subjectively for me, it was grounding me in reality. I'm just like, look for yourself and throw yourself at things, and it's gonna be fucking amazing.
See, when it came to the soundtrack part with the more modern songs, I kind of feel a little bit opposite.
Oh, really?
It kind of, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I do respect that and all, but for those parts, like the transition scenes and the music of that, it kind of took me a bit out of the world, because even though it is set in space, they have British accents, they have, I forget what it's called, they have British accents. They're Cockney. There's Cockney.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. Obviously, Treasure Island, I want to say took place around the 1400s, 1500s, something like that. Mm-hmm. And even though it was in space and the technology was there, I still felt like it was in, those times, and that the culture was based in those times. Just the way they talked and all that. So, when I hear modern music, it kind of took me a little bit out of the world. I was just kind of like, wait a minute, what? I'm not saying they needed to be like, 1400, 1500, like pirate music or pirate singing or anything like that. Although that would have been really cool. But, it did kind of it did kind of take me out of the world a little bit.
All right. So, what character stood out for you the most?
I'd probably say John Silver, just because I played him. Like, I know this character is a teeny bit different in this movie, just because, and if you're doing it like modern like that in Disney and Aliens and all that stuff, you have to make some tweaks to it. And there are some few differences between like the book and the movie. Like the move in this Treasure Planet, like he had a very, very close relationship with Jim and all that kind of stuff. In Treasure Island, they had a relationship and it was close, but it wasn't like I don't want to say it wasn't close. Like they were like particularly like as close as it was in the movie. Because in the movie they're like hugging each other. Treasure Planet, they're like hugging each other, and they're all like, "You're a light, Jimbo," and I'm like. I was like, oh, that's sweet, because it is sweet. But it's a bit different from Treasure Island. But I want to say that in the Treasure Island book, in, the play that I was in, those feelings that he had for Jim probably kind of were there, but they were more internalized because he was this hardened pirate. So for the movie of Treasure Planet, it felt that John Silver had a bit more. I'm just going to call him Long John Silver because that's how I know him. But Long John Silver had he had his heart was out there more. He had a bit more of a heart and all that. Although he did have some scary moments where he's all like, I'm not in Treasure Planet that I really enjoyed, especially with the animation, and the voice actor too was amazing as well. I really enjoyed the voice acting in this film. It was perfect, honestly.
Mr. Scrope, you ever see what happens to a fresh pup when you squeeze real?
But his love for Jim was so much more out in Treasure Planet than, I feel like it was in Treasure Island. But in Treasure Island, it was still there. It was just kind of repressed, So while all of that's going on, what I liked about it, though, I did like about it, is that I was kind of like, I wish I would have watched this film before I performed Treasure Island or anything like that, because I feel like it might have given me a little bit of a different kind of perspective. Not that I don't think that how I played Long John Silver was bad or anything like that. I think, for what I did, it was as accurate as I could portray him and all that kind of stuff. And I was, happy with my performances. But, it's always interesting when, you kind of view characters differently than when you play them, or you have more life experience and you look at things differently. Like, here's another role I want to tackle again. Like, Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet. I have to do that role again at some point because one is the best role I've ever done. He's one of my favorite characters of all time, period. But also all the life experience I have now, just I want to play him again so bad. But anyways, back to Treasure Planet. I really did enjoy how Long John Silver was portrayed, and I think it was also needed as well because it's a Disney film, and films are, of all the critiques I do have about Disney, that's more on the business side of things, but creating heartfelt, meaningful movies is really what they do best, and you needed Long John Silver to be a little bit different, than how he usually is in the original story.
Absolutely.
So I thought what they did was good.
And I think Silver, other than this incredible animation style that he was created in, and the way he was animated in this, very emotional and I want to say that very receptive type of visual for him. Like I remember I used to sketch him out in high school because I didn't speak a word of English, and I was just like I had nothing to do in any of my classes because like all of my teachers just like I'm gonna give him a passing grade, so I just sit down and sketch him out just because of how animated like his robot arm was. He's just like this incredible character, but I think he was born in a writing like that. He's being this cyborg and the main villain, as well as a great supporting character, a mentor, and in the end, a father figure of the story. Some would even argue that he might be the main character. He absolutely is not, but like, just the dynamic between him and Jim, you're absolutely right. And although
you could say that there's two main characters in the film, and he's one of them, but I wouldn't say he was the main character, no.
Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, if you think about it that way, every character in this movie has an arc, which is like its own separate thing that I was going to tackle later. But the fact that Silver just manages to be all of these things at once.
Except for the first mate that died. He didn't have a story arc. He just died.
Yeah, that the first mate just kind of dies. But that's, he's also this very honorable, character. And, oh my God, you're reminding me about it. And I'm just like, I didn't even think about that scene just because I was like thinking about everything else about the film, just all the visuals and all the other characters. Like, oh yeah, right, that guy gets...
That rock guy. I forget his name, but I'm going to call him Rock Guy.
He gets thrown into a fucking black hole in the beginning of the film. He's just like, shit, they're all mortal, they can all die.
I didn't expect sorry to interrupt, but for a Disney film, it got a little dark. Like, people were thrown into space, people were thrown into black holes. You saw like skeletons.
It's
crazy, man.
It's insane. And the more I think about it, the scarier it gets. And yeah, like I think Silver's character just kind of fits into that world so much. And if I was to describe like the vibrancy of the world and characters I met, the first character I think about is not Jim, it's obviously Silver. And yeah, and the thing is, like, I think his underlying arc, from being this corrupt, kind of broken, torn apart person who, lost his limbs trying to chase the treasure and whatever, he seems to be, and I mean, also his visual aesthetic, half of him is cyborg and the other half is human, so he's kind of torn apart between the good and bad and everything, but I think it's really interesting to just observe this corrupting power of greed. And it's not just Silver that represents that. It's also all the like sidekicks of his that come to seek the treasure as well. And in the final scene, we see them. When the whole planet starts to explode and fall apart, they start to run, and we see like two of them trying to carry one of those chests full of money and coins and gold and whatever, and they just they fall and they die. I have to say, this movie, just keep thinking about it over and over again. This film is so easy, like, going on killing its characters. Like, I think half of the crew dies by the end of the film.
Yeah, they all got swallowed into that planet. It fucking exploded, and they were sent into black holes, and it was crazy, man.
Truly. But one of my favorite highlights that like literally just made me captivated by the film is the visuals and a deep canvas work they did. And the most amazing transition I can think of is the Crescent, when Jim just decides to go on a journey to get to the treasure planet with everyone, and we see the transition of the crescent that is like right kind of above his head in a window, and you don't make anything out of it until it starts to zoom into it, and this crescent becomes a huge like spaceport type
It's very
deal.
creative.
It
was like some Star Wars shit.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's one of the things like that, and this is probably the bigger inspiration that I got from this film, is really like just it really reinforced the belief of you can do anything creatively. Like as a creator, it really said like you can do anything creatively, any idea that you have, put it out there, get it together. It can be great no matter what it is. Because think about this. Imagine these dudes who created this pitching it to Disney. That sounds ridiculous, right? But it came out amazing. So like you could do anything,
Absolutely. And
don't let your limitations think like otherwise.
there is an insane
Don't
story
limit
about
yourself.
it. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossi, the writers, they worked on so many different Disney films around that time. They did Mouse Detective, they did Little Mermaid, they did Aladdin, and they did Hercules. The funny thing is that before they even made Mouse Detective, they made one of the biggest flops for Disney at the time. I do not remember the name of the film, and I did not write it down. But they pitched the film to the executives back then for the first time. They were like, hey, this is Treasure Island in space. And they're like, you're going to have to redeem yourselves after the flop you did. So they worked on Mouse Detective, and it was a mild success. Then they did A Little Mermaid, and it was more than a mild success. Then they did Aladdin, and then they did Hercules.
Boom.
And every single time they would come in and go like, can we do Treasure Planet now? No. Can we do Treasure Planet? No. And then after they did Hercules, while they were working on Hercules, actually, they already got people together to do some drawings and concept art in order for the pitch to work better. And I think they started working a script too. And after they did these 4 big films, that's when they finally got a green light on Treasure Planet. So it was a really big passion project for them and for the crew that worked on it.
Yeah, I felt you could feel that there was a lot of love that went into this film.
Absolutely. Sure. Honestly, I had to do some After Effects work for some of my films, and just spending countless hours trying to balance out I would spend 48 hours trying to work on like 3 frames because I had to just like match things just right. And yeah, I'm kind of an amateur in this, but imagining shit like Deep Canvas with the technology of like late 90s and early 2000s,
Crazy.
having to do that for every single scene and every single frame of that film.
I can't even imagine.
Yes,
I hope they all
not
got
have people.
paid. I hope they all got paid.
Oh, they did. You have no idea how much they all got paid. There were millions of dollars they got into this, and Deep Canvas is like a money shredding machine. That's how much money you need to pay to the animators of Deep Canvas. It's insane. But I think it was worth every penny. Even though the movie
100%.
flopped tremendously, I think it was worth every penny. And
Yeah, and you see, that's the thing about creative stuff is that even if like, I know there's be like, oh, it sounds stupid and all that kind of stuff, but like, even if you put your stuff out there and to other people, it's not like, because I've never seen like, I've never seen anyone say that Treasure Planet just straight up is a bad film. It might not have done that well, but maybe just people weren't interested in it. But at least they did something and they put it out there.
you see,
That's more you could say. That's more than you could say for a lot of people.
You see, part of the reason why it failed is actually not because the movie was bad, but because of the way it was brought up. And there was a video on YouTube, and there's like a popular speculating opinion that Disney is kind of the people who are responsible for the failure of it, because the types of there's like a lot of kind of elements that came together that resulted in it. But the biggest one was the fact that Treasure Planet was released against Harry Potter.
Well, of course, yeah.
And Santa Claus, Disney's own Christmas movie, and it was a winter movie. It was released in winter, yes,
yeah.
and
that's probably why.
It is absolutely a summer movie. It is absolutely a film that's like, it's a blockbuster that's supposed to be released in summer.
Exactly, it's a total summer movie. Like, I'm thinking about it, and like, if something like that came out now in the summer, people would love it. Like, that doesn't make any sense that it flopped like that. But if it's competing against those movies, then yeah.
And
everyone wants to see Santa, and everyone wants to see Harry Potter.
Yeah,
so.
And the other contributing factor was also the fact that DVD was a thing back then, and everyone just kind of knew that, hey, like, I don't have to go watch Treasure Planet in the theater. I can go and buy DVD when it comes out. And actually, like, it got a pretty decent revenue from it, but like, again, it's just the fact that all these elements came together. It just kind of flopped financially. But the argument that I like to think about, like, people kind of hear it and they're like, oh yeah, like, of course, because financial success is paramount to the success of the film altogether. But I think it kind of proves the point that sometimes you have to spend a ton of money on like a true masterpiece and allow it to not pay itself off. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. Filmmaking is a business above all, and successful films do that. And I think one of the perfect examples is Joker, because it's a beautifully executed film with so many things, and we should definitely do an episode on Joker. But and then it paid off like tenfold. It's one of the, I think it has like one of the biggest ratios of budget with box office success with within like a decade or something. But the point is, Treasure Planet is the opposite. It's the opposite side of the spectrum. It's not gonna make a lot of money. It didn't make a lot of money, but it's been more than, it's been almost 20 years since the film was released, and we're talking about it. And people will continue to talk about it because it stays with you. And if you see this as a child, you don't forget it. And that is special. It's
definitely developed a bit of a cult following.
Absolutely. The fact that it looks gorgeous, and I don't think I've seen a more gorgeous film than that. There's also a huge historical impact that the film made that is not being talked about at all. The Treasure Planet was kind of one of the last major 2D animated films created by Disney, and the films that followed, the big films that follow would be Princess and the Frog and this one other movie that, it came out in 2009. This is a dying art, the 2D animation, and Treasure Planet was definitely one of these last big events that happened in the world of 2D animation. And it's just, I don't know, I think it's upsetting. I think we need to bring it back somehow. I have no idea how. It is not going to pay for itself. No executive is going to agree to make a film like that.
We got to make a film like that, Igor. We're going to make a 2D animation film. That's what we're going to do.
Don't make me do that. I had to do a stop motion. My sophomore year of college, I had to do a stop motion with talking coins that my friend wrote, and it was so painful.
I did an animation thing one time as well. It was a long time ago, dude. That shit was hard.
yeah, just yeah. Now you see, it's a tremendous amount of work, and you see, when you have dedicated yourself to this type of craft, when you know how to draw things frame by frame, this type of, the amount of work and effort that goes into it, Pixar animators can understand that. And pretty much all the mainstream Disney animators,
which are pretty much Disney animators now.
Well, now, yeah. But Disney animators, pretty much all Disney animation ever since I think 1947 or 37. That's when the Snow White came out. One of the first animated films, and Bambi and Snow White were one of the first ones, and I mean Mickey Mouse obviously, but from that point on, it was just the growth and flourishing of the industry of the animated films, because people wanted to see it. Cartoons are amazing, and just the fact that to me personally, I think Treasure Planet in many ways kind of is a culmination, the catharsis of this flourishing industry that was building onto itself and developing in many different ways, and it was just really, really interesting. And that film, with the captivating scenes it has, with the animation style and the writing and the voice acting that has advanced to that point, and also the sound and the soundtracks, it all comes together into this beautiful masterpiece of animation that was kind of its last energetic breath before the death of the industry. God damn, that sounds depressing.
I don't know if I'd say that the animation, 2D animation, yeah, but animation in general, it's still a very much alive sort of thing. I mean,
absolutely.
CGI, it's pretty much animation. But, all fucking Marvel movies do it. Superhero movies, whatever, you name it.
Yeah.
But what I think is really sort of an interesting thing when we talk about animation is that I really feel that animation is really the way that people can go balls to the wall with their imaginations and just kind of do anything they want to do, because because you're just making a streamlined kind of film or something like that, you're just sticking to that and you're doing that. But the animation, I feel like it allows you to just kind of do every sort of creative thing that you can with what you have. Even, it's gonna sound so goofy, even with something you remember those Captain Underpants books, bro? And so. How you could during the fight scenes, you could if you flip through the pages fast enough, you could there was like animation of them like actually like punching each other. So like one page they're setting up the punch, the next page they're punching and all that. If you rip through the pages fast enough, it would actually look like they were moving. And then when you look at things like, you know, Treasure Planet, like what if that was just like live action or something like that? I feel like animation really allows you to really go into explore all areas of your imagination. I think it's a really interesting
Absolutely.
thing.
And you know, the other thing that animation certainly gives a huge advantage with is the aliens. You know, you cannot make aliens look, you can relate to an alien the same way you relate to a human. And in Treasure Planet, due to, you know, this broken boundary that, you know, animation allows you to do, you can relate to them as characters the same way because, you know, the stylistic choices that people make. And like,
speaking of the aliens, watching this film gave me like a nostalgia trip in a way where I started to think about like my childhood and the animated films that I watched and all that kind of stuff, like Lilo and Stitch. When how you say Treasure Planet is like, you know, a big one for you when it comes, you know, for the animation one. I started thinking about films like Lilo and Stitch, which were like that film is massive in my life.
oh yeah,
It was one of the reasons. It's pretty much the reason why I moved to Hawaii. Like, because I watched it all the time. My mom was like, well, I've always been interested in going. Fuck it, let's go, and all that kind of stuff. And just a lot of other films like Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, all that kind of stuff.
you know, Lilo and Stitch also was a big part of my childhood. And
Iron Giant.
I'll
get to that one.
My little heart. Dude, Iron Giant is the shit, and we should talk about that movie too.
Absolutely gonna talk about that.
I actually think we need to make like a whole section for animated films because they're like its own industry and its own, you know, spectrum to talk about.
I agree. I agree.
So we should definitely have like a season of the show where we just talk about animation. Let's get back to the Treasure Planet. Is there something else? We didn't recap the plot, but honestly, I don't think we need to because
I don't think we need to. Well, okay, so here's the thing. I really don't. I mean, we could, but it's Treasure Island, man. If you haven't read Treasure Island, then who are you?
Yeah, like
culture yourself.
And honestly,
stop it.
Honestly, we're gonna make this kind of like I guess we did spoil a lot, but we're not gonna recap the plot for you because if you haven't seen Treasure Planet, go and see it, and don't be one of those people that made the movie fail when you didn't see it when it came out. And I know that a lot of people were born after it came out, but you know what? That's not an excuse. Go and see that goddamn movie because it's gonna make your childhood.
It's pirates in space. How can you not want to see that? That sounds. Even if I like didn't even know what it was, right? Which I was like that yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds awesome. Pirates in space. Come on, guys. No one wants to watch this? What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you all?
What's wrong with people?
That is very true. Yeah, it's definitely one of those films that just captures you with the vibe. And, you know, I gotta say, one thing that I loved about it that has, like I watched it recently after, you know, getting into the whole writing thing, because there was like a 6 to 7 year period in my life where I didn't watch it at all and I kind of forgot it existed. And throughout that time, I got interested in filmmaking and writing. And I watched the film again, and what was captivating to me is that like I was so attached to all these characters. Like that farting, you know, even that like farting creature that is just
alien thing, yeah.
Dude, for some reason I wasn't bothered by it. Like, you know, usually when you get like it's a walking fart joke, but it isn't because it has like an arc, you know, it laughs at things, it likes things, it dislikes things, it's angsty.
It's an interesting way to put a fart humor in there. I'll give it that.
Absolutely.
It's the most creative fart humor I've ever seen.
That is a well-deserved thing.
For sure. I can't think of fart humor that has been more creative than that. That is actually like a fart humor that actually is a character.
Yeah.
Never seen that before. I'll give the film that.
And so like notion that every single character in the film has an arc, a distinctive arc, from the captain to the doctor to Jim's mom, Jim obviously, but then like everybody else too. Even the most minor characters have some type of arc, and those of them that don't go through the change are either dead, like the Rockman, who I mean, he was kind of this, to me, he was this pedestal of greatness. It's like this guy who you can rely on, and it kind of like, if you're watching it and you know that the team will betray them because it's a Treasure Island based, plot, knowing that he's around kind of reassures you that, like, yeah, this guy can put up a fight. And then he dies, and you're just like, shit, we're so screwed. Like, if this goes the same way Treasure Island goes, I have no idea how they're gonna survive. It's Jim, the captain lady, who's like, yeah, she's great and all, but is she gonna stand up against the whole team? I don't think so. And that really captivates. It was captivating for me. It was raising the stakes of the story. Plus, the world where they can randomly just wander into a collapsing star like that. That ain't safe.
Mm-hmm.
And, one character that I was really curious about that is actually almost not in a movie. He is present in a form of a skeleton. Like, we see him at the very beginning of the film. He also has an arc, and it's subtle and it's hidden. But I just find it to be fascinating because thinking about the plot and, like, why would a person like Flint, turn the whole, like, stash of gold that he's been stealing into a giant trap? And here's my thinking on that. He is by far the greatest. Yes, sure. I guess you could think about it that way. Oh my god, I almost lost my train of thought.
Sorry, that's what I'm here for.
Oh, that's exactly what you're there for. But think about it this way. He is one of the greatest pirates of all times. And he knows that there's absolutely no way he'll be able to spend essentially blood money. Like, they all know exactly who he is, and he's not going to, be able to use that gold for anything. It's not like he can just walk into a bank and deposit it, or, like, reinvest into, the economy of Ethereum worlds, which obviously doesn't work like that. He did it exclusively, the reason why he would, like, booby trap his stash is because he wants to be the only one able to amass this amount of gold and this amount of goods that he stole. He wants to save his name long after his death. And, like, I also think that he got to this thinking.
Oh, it's not about the money, it's about the legacy.
It's about the legacy, and it's about greed, because he doesn't want anybody else to have more than he managed to get.
Capitalism.
Greed, the corrupting power of greed. And if you think about it, a lot of people. What did you think? What was your opinion on Ben's character, the robot that, like, the Ben Gunn's prototype in the film?
He was okay. He kind of reminded me of watching him. It kind of reminded me of this film. It's actually another pretty underrated animated film, Robots.
Oh.
It reminded me of Robin Williams' character.
Dude, you know what? Okay, I gotta say it. Graduate of my school made that movie.
Oh yeah, that's right. You told me that.
Yeah, but
I remember you told me that.
Somebody compared them to Jar Jar, but yeah, like he is thought to be like one of the off-putting characters who's kind of like a comic relief type guy. But I think he's a pretty good, like, embodiment of Ben Gunn, and, like, the fact that he lost his mind while being trapped there. But also, like, I think his like, I do think that he's not perfectly written into the story, but I think that the fact that Flint kind of took out his memory to, prevent to telling people that this booby trapped, it also tells a lot about Flint's character. He's ruthless, and he's willing to, yeah, it's an android and all, but it's still kind of a conscious living. Well, he's not a conscious thing.
Well, here, you want to get deep?
Sure.
Here, we're gonna get deep. Okay.
Get deep.
So this is what I saw. So when you see at the end of the film, you see Long John Silver, and he is holding the ship of gold that has all the gold on it, and then he sees Jim and all that kind of stuff, right? Notice how his real actual hand was reaching out to Jim, while his robotic hand was holding on to the ship. Now, when you think about it in the ways of how the ship in the gold represents loss, right? Ben lost his mind, Long John Silver lost his limbs, and the crew, they lost all each other and they all died, right? So when Long John Silver wants to go, and he actually goes and he ends up saving Jim, he's saving himself, right? He's making himself whole again and all that kind of stuff, instead of hanging on to the treasure, because that represents the loss.
Oh my god! And that is the single most cathartic change for his character.
Yes, exactly. So when Long John Silver saves Jim, that's him gaining something instead of losing something. He regained or gained his humanity instead of gaining the treasure, which signifies the loss, which is why he's hanging on to it with his robotic hand.
Holy shit! Boom! wait! Ready? And that also represents the polarity of his character compared to Jim's. The fact that Jim's change is happening slowly throughout the film, of him slowly starting to understand his own identity and finding himself and obtaining himself. For Silver, it all kind of happens in an instant when he chooses to save Jim's life over the gold.
Yep.
And that's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I have to say, this is a pretty good dissection of the film, I think.
You know what makes me really happy about this film? And kind of like, this was a really interesting artistic choice. There's a lot of films that go for like a steampunk aesthetic. Because, like, I mean, this film, you know, is set up in the Victorian era. The aesthetic of this film takes a lot from the Victorian era Britain. And like, what they could have done is they could have created all of these machines in space that work on, you know, steam engines and really go full on steampunk, but they choose not to. And I think it's the great thing that they didn't, because steampunk like aesthetic has been around for the longest time, and it has set up certain boundaries and these like visual rules that it works by that can be extremely limiting, because you have to explain everything. And what they did instead is they threw together all of these details and made them all tell their own story. It starts out from the details of the houses they live in and the interiors, from to the way how the ship works. Like, and I think the design of the ship is one of the coolest things, one of the perfect examples of it. It could have been a steampunk type, like a steamboat, you know, that also has boosters in it and everything. But instead, they choose to turn the sails into the solar panels, and then, you know, on the bottom there's this giant kind of like a fusion battery of some sort. It's not committing to steampunk style. They go like, what is our story about and what does it need visually? And then they just make everything, every single aspect of the film feed into this aesthetic. And it's been broken down several times, so I'm not gonna dwell on it too much, but like the doors with handles, you know, they sound like old-fashioned Victorian doors, and like the way the wood like makes the sounds, and the soundscape is actually one of the things that embraces it the most. You know, the wooden floors sound a certain way, but then the boosters sound like boosters. And space like moments of the sci-fi things sound like them, and like, you know, the laser that is like leading them to the gateway portal on the planet itself, it sounds futuristic.
Where is it?
I see nothing. One great big stinking hunk of nothing.
There's like a perfect balance of things that doesn't give in to any of those more utilized aesthetic, like kind of like a utilitarian, you know, relationship to building your world. They're not giving into it, and I just love them for that, because you should build your world based on a story that is happening within it. And, you know, that's how Harry Potter was written. You know, the concept art was, J.R. Rowling said it many times, that, like, you know, she built the world based on the needs of the characters in the story. I guess what I'm trying to say is that with this type of modeling of the world that embraces the storytelling, it is a lot easier to make your viewer and your audience commit to their suspension of disbelief, and then puts them into the story.
World building's an interesting one, because I'm kind of researching and getting into that, because I wanna write like a book, like a novel series, fantasy series, and all of that. We'll talk about world building as more and more as we get into different films, like you know, the one that I think does it best, Lord of the Rings, and Avatar. Yes, but world building is definitely a tricky one.
Yeah,
I'd say it was probably easier for this one because it already did have world building concepts. I know like the space and the aliens are different, but the story was there, and like the feel and the culture of it was kind of there. You know, pirates and all of that.
Yeah, that is very true. That is very true. And yeah, so it's a great ass movie. So y'all should go see it.
It is a pretty good ass movie. And that's you can't trust the fucking ratings, man, because the rating on this was not that high, but deserves a pretty high rating.
Yeah. And when
Don't
it came
listen to the
out,
film.
it was really critically acclaimed. And I think that's part of the reason why it was nominated for the Oscars. Is because, that's just, it's a good movie. And it's really unfortunate that it became a victim of poor marketing and just like bad release. I think this concludes. I think we both agree that Treasure Planet is an incredible film. And if you haven't seen it, this is like a must watch for everybody.
Yeah, it's a pretty great film. I did enjoy myself a lot.
Yeah.
Probably because I have a bit more emotional weight to it because I acted in Treasure Island, but it's just a solid film anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you don't even know what Treasure Island is.
Oh, yeah. I actually learned the story of Treasure Island from this Soviet cartoon. That was like a half cartoon, half black and white film, and it was made by like a whole bunch of animating teams that were completely inconsistent with like the way they did it, but it also has its own charm, and I think one day we'll talk about that too.
I watched Looney Tunes in a Russian dub before.
Oh, Jesus Christ,
it was pretty scary.
Why would you do that? All right. Well, got any final thoughts on this so we can cut the podcast?
Nah, man. I'd say what we got is pretty good. Thank you, listeners, for watching. This has been another episode of Last Minute Movie Watching. Like if you liked it, subscribe, share it, and anything you'd like to say, Igor?
Oh, thank you for listening.